Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to the All Hands on Deck show. I'm Reverend Ira Ackery, and I'm so happy to have you. You know me, I'm the CEO of the GSJ Family Life Center, located at 1256 North Waller, and the phone number is 773-378-3300. So happy to have with me today my very good friend and my guest. He is the national spokesman for the Rainbow Push Coalition. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, and welcome to Professor Jonathan Jackson. Welcome, Jonathan.
Would you like to see you, Reverend Ackery? No, I'm honored to be here, and thank you, Reverend Ackery, for all of your years of service and the work that you do every day. And so that's why I'm here, to stand with you and to answer questions and to have a dialogue. A private conversation you and I normally get into, we're going to make public. So I'm honored to be here, Reverend Ackery.
There's a whole lot going on, and we're going to give you an opportunity. Many of you have seen much of the work that Jonathan has done in our city and across the nation, and you have an opportunity to talk with him about a plethora of things. Number one, the DOJ report on the Chicago Police Department. Ouch! It's all I have to say right now. I want to turn it over to Jonathan in a minute, but we're going to also talk about how African Americans can survive, not only blacks, but the blacks and browns and the marginalized in the midst of this Trump administration. We want to maybe even get his take on what is his thoughts about Steve Harvey having a meeting. Was it a productive use of time? There's a lot to talk about, and the number is 312-738-1060. Thank you for watching. We're really in for a great show today. Tell us about your role.
Well, where do we start, Reverend Ackery? I think we started first with the Trump administration.
Sure.
I think the critical issue, starting with your last issue first, Mr. Steve Harvey,
Yes.
is this all roads go back to the Department of Justice. The nominee for the Attorney General's spot, which is Mr. Jefferson Beauregard Sessions from Alabama, who has constantly been against voting rights, Voting Rights Act, voting protection. We've seen that most recently where the Title Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act was pulled out. And what did that do? That eliminated the pre-clearance that was necessary from the Justice Department for states that had shown a pattern of racial segregation, racial intimidation, voter suppression. When that was removed, then we saw since 2010, 868 polling places removed, primarily in African-American neighborhoods. For example, in the state of Wisconsin, 70% of the black population lives in Milwaukee, and yet they've had a reduction in their polling places, which creates longer lines, which change the level of IDs that you need. For example, the same places you went to vote 4 years ago with the same ID, you cannot vote in that place today. Wow. And so there was a reduction in people participating.
Sure.
So the places where Obama had won by 300,000 votes, now Mr. Trump won by 27,000 votes in Wisconsin. He won by 10,000 votes in the state of Michigan. And if you can imagine this on a presidential year, something that is statistically impossible, which shows you it's inaccurate, is that 90,000 people in the city of Detroit did not vote at the top of the ticket. Their electronic ballot showed that no one picked a presidential candidate at the top of the ticket. Statistically, that's impossible. What happened is there was fault with the machine. And so this is why there's been outcries with Mr. Representative John Lewis and other people to say something happened wrong in this election.
I want you to comment about the John Lewis statement. What do you think about John's statement and Trump's reaction?
Oh, I think that if we were to look at Mr. John Lewis is an American hero. John Lewis is part of one of the founding fathers, if you will, of the new America. We're proud Super Bowl is going to be in Texas, and that the Atlanta Falcons are playing, and Dallas can play. But none of these teams would be in the South had it not been for the courageous act of Representative John Lewis, Reverend Martin Luther King, and other people. And this is in the words of Reverend Martin Luther King. There were three major revolutions in American history. One was George Washington, when you change relations amongst people and you change the institutions. So when the United States became a separate country, that's when we had a revolution. Absolutely. And we not only changed the subjects of the British and the King and the Queen to that being citizens within our own country. The second was with Abraham Lincoln, When the South had succeeded, he brought those institutions back together for North and South, and African Americans technically were liberated from slavery. And then the final frontier is when Reverend Martin Luther King, his crown jewel of his achievement was the Voting Rights Act, making sure that it was real, that everyone could secure the right to vote. And these are the things that we're proud of in Title IX funding for women in athletics and making equal rights. It was the first step. He died at only the age of 39, but it had not quite been the reality. He had unfinished business. He did an enormous amount of work in a very short period of time. So I think it's absolutely disgraceful that Mr. Donald Trump would attack a American icon, one of the founding fathers. And I would ask, what did Trump do to make America better? We know what John Lewis did to make America better, and we can't say right now that he is emoting or sharing a vision that is bringing us together. But yet he's bantering and sounds a little childish, if you will, and attacking everyone. That I hope he starts extolling and showing the good that people are doing and the behavior we should emulate, as opposed to attacking everyone, Mr. Trump.
Do you think he is an illegitimate president?
I wouldn't go there. I don't. I would say that we have a faulty system.
Sure.
That anytime Mrs. Clinton can win by 2.9 million votes, that the person that won the popular vote did not win the presidential vote. I think there's a broken system. And to the degree that...
The only thing about that, though, in all due fairness, had it been the other way around, we wouldn't be saying anything. We can't change the rules after the game has began and ended, you know?
Exactly.
And I think being minorities, I think sometimes the electoral process may work in our favor.
Well, and I also think that there was an issue with, we've got the Attorney General office, Loretta Lynch. We've got the President, Barack Obama. We've got the leading Democratic candidate, Mrs. Hillary Clinton. None of them are contesting the election.
Right.
And so that's the problem I have with it.
Yeah.
Should they have been contesting it? Absolutely. People were denied the right to vote. We do not know the role of the discouraged voter, people that showed up at polling places in 21 states where they changed the law on the conditions that you needed to vote in from 4 years ago. You used to have to go through the Justice Department before you could change the law.
Sure.
And so now they've kind of capriciously, arbitrarily changed the law, and that's a problem. So do I think that it's a flawed election? Absolutely. But President Obama is turning over the reins of power. There have not been lawsuits filed by our Justice Department, by our Attorney General, by the President and the party. So I'm not holding out for that, and I wouldn't start off on that note, but I certainly have full faith and confidence and respect for Mr. John Lewis and those lawmakers that would know more than me about it.
And it's about 4 dozen lawmakers who are also going to sit out the election. This is unprecedented.
Correct, and I think rightfully so, that they're very much concerned about the tone and tenor of this campaign and what Mr. Trump is projecting. I think when you have Mr. Bannon of the alt-right in his cabinet, DeVos heading for the Secretary of Education, when you can have Jeff Sessions going towards the Department of Justice, I think they're trying their best to alarm and alert people that there's a serious change, and we have to be prepared to defend our rights. Gains that were made should not be lost and thrown away. So
what's this deal with this president-elect bringing in people like Kanye West and Steve Harvey? I mean, what is that? We have some really bright minds here in America, African-American voices, scholars and business people who could really have some great input. What's your thoughts about that?
Well, he did have a #1 television show, so he is in The Apprentice. He knows a lot of people in the entertainment business. Herschel Walker used to work for him when he had a football team. Mike Tyson endorsed him. Don King worked at his facilities in promoting events for many years. And so he's got an enormous amount of African-American relationships, and certainly
but these people are rich, and they don't have a vision for the community. These people many times are in the top 1%, and he said he was going to cut their taxes, so they will vote in their own personal interest. So why would a man bring a person who's only voting in its own personal interest to the table, when you should be bringing community leaders in if you're trying to bridge the gap. There's a whole lot of fear being fanned out here.
If you're trying to bridge the gap, which raises the question, what exactly is his end goal? And I would tell you that I think Mr. Harvey was sincere in trying to continue to seek solutions for upward mobility for our community. He certainly demonstrated that as a commitment in his resources. I think that unlike being on the stage and unlike being on the film set, that getting into the political arena, you're talking about juggling knives, and if you miss one of them, you can get your fingers cut off. This is like
That's exactly right.
This is very, very tricky. When I think what happened with Mr. Harvey, in all fairness, is that you have to go see Mr. Trump. Somebody has to, and you have to have an agenda, and it should be made public beforehand. And then after you come out of the meeting, you should be able to tell the people what is the goal, what is the consequences, what are the challenges. But when Mr. Harvey came out and said he didn't know anything about what was going on with Mr. Sessions,
Exactly.
you're like, whoa, then somebody in that room should.
The lines are lit up, Professor.
Okay,
We're
man.
going to have to let the caller get on the line. Come on, first caller. Talk to us. Welcome to All Hands on Deck.
Yes, and good afternoon to y'all guys. You know what? It's getting to a point. We need to quit talking about what was. The horse is out of the barn now. What we need to start doing, try to start thinking about getting in with our politicians. There's even politicians on the right side of the aisle. It's time, let's start thinking about impeaching this man. I don't think this man have any right, any idea of what he's going to do. And you know, the sad thing about it might be good, but somewhere down the line, it's going to be wrong. So I think the best thing to do, let's start getting in contact with politicians. Let's people start getting in contact with their politicians, and let's get this man impeached, because I don't think he have any business in there. Now, that's just my opinion. And as far as I know, he don't know anything about politics. But let me get out there so I can hear your response, and thanks for taking the call.
We got people watching all on Facebook Live. Phones are ringing off the hook. And this gentleman, he just asked about impeaching President Trump, but he has control of the legislative body, right? Can you speak to that, Professor?
Well, I think you first have to have impeachable offenses, that you don't want to have the bar so low that people can use the tyranny of the majority and just start running someone out. It's hard to believe he hasn't already been in office for the first 100 days yet, that he officially gets sworn in like another 2 days. But he went to work on November 8th.
And to me, that's terrible. To me, it was very disrespectful. I'm past 50 years old. Like you.
I'm 51, right?
and I've never in my lifetime, man, seen a president take leadership and start making decisions on the day of election. It's just totally disrespectful.
Well, Reverend Ackley, you talk about it all the time. Power abhors a vacuum.
Sure.
So if you're not going to use power, somebody else is going to take it from you. So he just saw that there wasn't that much going on, and he has seized the reins. He's not timid. He's very fervent in his belief. And he has an ideology.
Yeah, he does.
And so
he got followers.
Right, and so he brought his team along. Priebus was the head of the Republican National Committee. Now he's making him chief of staff. Bannon had alt-right, which is very fascist group. He's calling him a national advisor. But what could have happened in this administration under Obama? President Emil Jones should have been not only given an award, National Medal of Freedom, but he should have been somewhere as a senior advisor, counselor in the administration. Jeremiah Wright would have a role to play. Many other people, even Father Flagel and yourself, Reverend Ira Ackley, the whole civil rights team
I'm waiting on that call.
Right. The whole civil rights team needed to be in the administration. The Department of Justice could have been expanded in the Civil Rights Division. So when you have power, you have to use it.
We got another call. Caller, speak real quickly. We got a lot of calls waiting to talk with the professor.
Yes, hello. My name is Valerie. Listen, what has worked before, you always use what has worked. If it works, you use it. From the civil rights movement, from the beginning, we did certain things. We dropped the ball, people. I knew the prophecy we would have a black president in the end, but your father was there in '68, Carol, boycotting. I know the routine. We have dropped the ball. We need to do our job.
All right.
Yes.
You said we dropped.
Our young people have no direction. And I know what happened. Materialism kind of got us a little off, but the whole world has been the whole world is kind of confused. But we as a people, anybody with red blood, I don't care what color you are, but anybody that's on the side of right needs to
Hey,
stand up and do what we have to do. And I mean with intelligence, not for personal gain. You understand me?
all right. Thank you for your input. Thank you for your input. We got so many calls. Would you like to respond to that one?
Sure, I think that you are correct that not enough people have done enough for justice. And I think that those of us that believe in the life, the living, and have gratitude for the work of the Reverend Martin Luther King, that it's not a day of celebration, it's not an hour of service, that it's a lifestyle, that it's a commitment that you make. Reverend Martin Luther King didn't ask us to have a day of service. He had a consecrated life and had a commitment to a lifetime of service.
Sure.
And I think that we all have to renew ourselves, recommit ourselves every January to be vigilant all year long. The Montgomery bus demonstration, Reverend Martin Luther King did not like calling them boycotts. He didn't want to operate in the negative. He wanted to do it in the positive. It was a demonstration against the segregation, against the exploitation. And so he wanted to affirm love and simply withdraw economic support from a system that was humiliating, degrading the human spirit. And I think in that spirit, he led that for 381 days. Are we willing to commit ourselves to fighting for justice so that a Laquan McDonald's memory doesn't get forgotten in Chicago?
That's exactly right. Let's use that as a segue right into the Chicago predicament. We've had so much corruption in the Chicago Police Department, and we've been telling people this for years. And finally, a Department of Justice report comes down from Loretta Lynch's office and validates everything that people in our community have been saying. Do you have any insight that you'd like to lay in? Where do we go from here? They're talking about a consent decree being negotiated between the mayor's office and the president's or Department of Justice. But the truth of the matter is, we know Jeff Sessions, as you mentioned, is going to be the head of the Justice Department. So where do we go from here? There's got to be a strategy when we can maximize this report, because it had no teeth, nevertheless, but it has some value, I think.
Well, first of all, there are no surprises in the report. If anything, it was a very kid glove report. It came out with some startling facts, but Chicago has had the most stop and frisk, even more than New York City. Chicago is the third largest metropolitan area, but the second most largest amount of police officers. We've had torture that happened right here in the city of Chicago, not very far from the studio. We've had in Holman Square, where there was an off-site, black site, if you will, in Abu Ghraib, and other places, the same sort of conditioning, and yet no officer is being held accountable, being held responsible. So we have many great officers, and they want to do their job. The problem is that the bad officers come down to three things. They're not disciplined. You're going to see in that report, it's over 100 pages. I'm going to give you 3 points. It comes down to training,
Make it quick, because the callers are lining up. They're lining
okay,
up.
discipline, training, and the punishment. The officers aren't punished when they do wrong. The screening for the officers is poorly, and they're not getting the proper training. And that's what needs to happen. And I have zero confidence in Rahm Emanuel, who hid Laquan's case file, now being the one in charge of correcting it.
Absolutely. Call and speak, or forever hold your peace. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much, firstly, for taking my call. So my question is this: in terms of the inauguration boycotts that everyone is beginning to talk about, in terms of Congressman John Lewis not going and other congressional members saying they're not going to stand with him or stand in solidarity with him, do you think that that is the right thing to do, or should the country unify around our new president, whether we care for him personally or not?
Go ahead, John.
It's a freedom of expression. I support Representative John Lewis' stance. I think that there were other people, unfortunately, that made the stance that I think it was Mitch McConnell, that he was going to do everything he can to obstruct President Barack Obama. I think that was wrong. I don't think that's the progressive way to handle things. But I think in light of how offensive Mr. Trump has been, that this right here is a high expression of civil, not disobedience, but it's a clarion call to let people know something is wrong.
Sure.
And the election does have many problems. We've got the winner lost. She had 2.9 million more votes. So however we have to correct the Electoral College to modernize it, I think that should be a priority. But I do support Representative John Lewis and those other congressional persons that choose not to attend. And I think it's personally offensive and dangerous for our country that a attorney general, that someone could be nominated for attorney general that was deemed too racist for the Reagan era, to now say, forget all of that in the past. No, that leopard will not change its spots.
312-738-1060. You're welcome to call the show. Before we get to our next caller, let me just say this, Jonathan. What do you think about the mayoral election that's coming up in a couple of years? Mayor Emanuel continues his ongoing disrespect to our community. Mayor Emanuel received $1.1 billion from President Obama as he exits the White House. And he's taking all of that money and he's taking it on the north side, building up the infrastructure of railroads and the CTA and over there in Ravenswood. But nevertheless, these neighborhoods on the south side and west side are impoverished, and the epidemic of violence continues to soar. I mean, what do you say to Rahm Emanuel? Give me your take on that.
Well, Reverend Acri, this is another thing that I really enjoy and appreciate about you, is that you're a minister that's outspoken. You stand for social justice. And in the spirit of Reverend Martin Luther King, you not only on Sunday care about personal salvation, and you do a great job, but on Monday I can find you standing for social salvation. And I think if more ministers would gather around your leadership, you have a voice outside of the stained glass windows. Reverend Martin Luther King wanted to make sure we weren't looking in the rearview mirror, but instead out the headlights, out the front, going forward. There's a vision. I think Mr. Rahm Emanuel is being supported by so many ministers, and they need to be asked, what are you asking of Rahm Emanuel? Like, why don't we let Pharaoh go as opposed to Pharaoh let my people go? Like, what is he doing for you? You have to ask the question. When your neighborhood schools are being shut down, when the police that are killing officers aren't being indicted.
Brother, preach.
Come on, man. Don't get me started. That's easy.
Well, listen, we got some calls waiting. This time moves. We got to have you come back again, but I just got a message on Facebook. They want to know, are you going to run for mayor?
Oh, boy. That is not on my things to do list. I think I can be.
We need leadership, man, in this town.
Well, and I'm going to
help.
And I will be glad to weigh in my opinion, my advice, and I will be supporting some people. I don't know what's in store for me in the future just yet, but I do know who holds the future. So
caller, he don't want to give it up. He don't want to come clean, but I know some people that are trying to get him to run. All right, go ahead. Welcome to the show.
All right, please. Let's start in all 50 states. Let's start having meetings. I mean, seriously, okay? Because someone can't take money and you just can't do what you want to do if people are opposing you. Okay, come on. We have to be real people from the pulpit down to the ditch. Come on now.
Amen.
Change it. Come on. I mean, I'm calling everybody to do the right thing because we've dropped the ball. It's sad.
I agree with you. There's been collaborative failure of multiple institutions, right? Thank you so much. Thank you for calling.
Well, we asked another question I wanted to finish,
Sure.
and that was the mayor receiving $1 billion for our Chicago Transit Authority, going towards 4 stations to be rehabbed on the north side of Chicago. Well, there are stations that have been closed that need to be reopened right here on the west side on the Eisenhower. Before you talk about modernizing, why don't you fix the existing transit system? Why have you shut down transit stops for a major metropolitan area and have no interest in reopening them? The ATU workers, which is predominantly African American, they've been without a contract now for 13 months. The Teamsters, they got their contract ratified within a month, which is majority white males. There's something wrong with that. Black female bus drivers have to use porta potties right here in the city of Chicago in Arctic below zero weathers to park their bus. Something is wrong with that. And so Reverend Martin Luther King died fighting for the sanitation workers. He stood up fighting for proper treatment in Montgomery. And now we're seeing the same sort of back of the bus outhouse treatment right here in Chicago. And so I ask people to get involved. We're at Rainbow Push on 50th and Drexel every Saturday morning. Please come by there or follow my man, Reverend Ira Akron.
Well, let me just tell you,
teacher outside the pulpit and in the pulpit.
we appreciate you so much. Thank you for watching. Tomorrow on the west side at my church, 1256 North Wall Avenue, 9:30 a.m. to noon, we will be having some people in there trying to help people get jobs, job leads, resume writing, workshops. God bless you. See you next week. We'll be back. All hands on deck. Thank you so much.
See you, Reverend.
God bless.
Thank you.